Today on the show, I have the pleasure of speaking with Dan Handford. Dan is the principal at Handford Capital with his wife, Danae. This year, they've closed on 3 properties valued over $67 million and over 800 units as co-syndicators. Dan is a founder of and current president of 5 specialty medical clinics located throughout Southern Carolina. He is a trusted advisor to hundreds of physicians across the country looking to expand their clinics into multiple locations and helps them strategize effective marketing plans to reach their target markets. Dan is also an angel investor supporting numerous young entrepreneurs through local accelerator and incubator programs. And to top it all off, Dan and his wife have just started the new podcast called Tough Decisions for Entrepreneurs, which you can find on iTunes today. I'm really pumped and excited to have him on the show to share his incredible experience and knowledge. But enough out of me, let's get him out here. G'day, Dan. Welcome to the show. How you doing today, mate?
Doing great. I really do appreciate you inviting me on and having me on the podcast. Really looking forward to the interview today.
Mate, I am pretty pumped when you reached out as well. We're just talking a little bit in the green room about your background, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But before we do you want to tell us how you made your first ever dollar as a kid?
Sure. Well, I always tell people that, they say, when did you start, as an entrepreneur? And I've pretty much been an entrepreneur ever since I was born, I don't remember this, but I've been told by my parents that, when I was born, I was actually negotiating with the physician who was in the delivery room on which cheek he was going to slap, to make sure I was awake, But I would say that, I have tons of different things that I used to do when I was growing up, whether it be mowing lawns, or I remember, when I was in my high school years selling Cutco, even doing pressure cleaning for, gas stations and their concrete, and doing siding on houses and various things like that. And I would say my very first would be, selling, just candy door to door,
Sure.
For various, events or programs that our church or whatever our school was doing. So that would probably be some of the earliest dollars that I made. But my true money that I first made was probably mowing lawns. Just going door to door, finding local neighbors in our neighborhood to actually mow lawns, various things like that. And then of course the pressure cleaning thing was another big hit too. So we had a couple of contracts just with the local gas stations to come in every quarter and do their pressure clean of their sidewalks and stuff.
That's awesome. Did you, how old were you when you had that pressure cleaning business? Was it just you went out and bought a pressure cleaner with your dad or with some mates? How did it work?
No. So this was a big time pressure cleaning, that wasn't a large company, but it was one other guy that was a banker, and he started the company and then brought me on as a partner because he didn't want to do it anymore. And so he had this huge equipment. He had probably, like a 250-gallon water tank on it. It had a huge gas heater on it. And so we would pressure clean with real high-powered hot water,
Right.
And so it was a 14-foot trailer. I had to buy a truck to be able to do it. And so I was in my late teens, probably 16, 17 when I started doing the pressure cleaning side of things. But with the other ones, I can't remember. I mean, my mom and dad used to own a business too. So
right.
I did some work with them and various things like that.
Awesome, man. Well, I always like to ask that question because it really sets the stage for the type of person an entrepreneur you ultimately end up growing into, right? Like understanding the value of a dollar. And it sounds like you did some pretty wet and messy cleaning to get that dollar, right? To mowing lawns and power pressure.
It's kind of funny because if you look at my forearms, I used to get up on ladders and I would have to hang on one ladder and kind of, move my arm back and forth with one wand with that powerful, pressure cleaner. And I'd be hanging on with one arm and pressure cleaning with the other one. My one I used to pressure clean with, my forearm would always be bigger than the other one. So it was always kind of fun to kind of see that. It was like, man, I got bigger forearms on one side versus the other. And then it hit me. I'm like, yeah, because I'm standing on the ladder with that, 2,500 PSI pressure going against it.
Sure. Well, mate, now walk us through your journey, where you've got to today. I did mention in the introduction that you're a physician. So where did you go to school? And then how did you get into being, continuing the entrepreneurial journey,
Sure.
and tell us a little bit about what you're up to today.
Yeah. So when I went to chiropractic college, I'm a chiropractic physician. And so when I went to chiropractic college, one of the things that we always needed to, or every chiropractor needs, is a spine model to be able to learn the spine in order to, train. And
Sure.
so in our bookstore, we used to have them, and they still sell them today. And it was $185 for this spine model. And so I remember that today. It's still $185 probably today. Might even be more than that now. Who knows? But I would, I had a lot of my friends that would go to the bookstore and see how much it cost. And I heard them complaining. And so I decided, my background prior to that, going into chiropractic, I had some experience doing web design, web hosting, networking, those kind of things. And so I decided that I was going to go source this product, and try to figure out who I could buy it from and see if I can get a discount.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found the exact same spine model online, and I bought that. I called not the manufacturer first. I called one of their distributors up first and asked them, would you be able to sell me this spine? And if so, what kind of a discount could I get for it if I could buy 20 of them? I figured I could at least get 20 students to buy a spine from me. And they said, we can sell it to you for $65. And I said, awesome. I said, I'll take it. And so I was like, I'm going to sell it for 70. And I was like, well, I can't sell it for 70. Let's make it sound a little better than that. So I sold it for $69.95. And so I didn't want to have any like IOUs or anything like that. And so I made sure that I got money up front and in hand ahead of time. So I created a form, and they can go on PayPal and pay me, or write me a check or money order cash, or however it was. And in this chiropractic college, which is in Atlanta, Georgia, called Life University, it's the world's largest chiropractic college. And so every 3 months we have a new set of students that come through. And so there's over 120 students that start every 3 months. And so what I decided to do is go through every class. There's like 13 quarters. So I went through stood in front of every classroom and just did my little pitch in front of the room and just said, hey, I got the spine model. You don't have to pay 185. It's the exact same one. I'll give it to you for 70. I'll get you free shipping, or 69.95. I passed all the forms, and all of a sudden the money started coming in. The orders started coming in. By the end of that week, we had 80 orders in hand.
Wow.
And so I'm sitting here going, man, I wonder if I can find the manufacturer of this thing.
Right.
And so that's what I did is I cut out the middleman, found the manufacturer, got it for $42.48. And it also opened me up to be able to sell all of their other products. And so even today, we have a company called Shop Anatomical, where we sell skeletons and skulls and brains and hearts and ears and eyes and nose and the whole torso models. And we sell to colleges and universities and labs all across the United States and some across the world. We've sold to some of the Nigerian government and various things like that, which is a story in and of itself when you start working with the Nigerian government. I'm always worried about fraud there, but it's still to this day does 7 figures a year, and
Wow.
It's been passive for the last probably 7 or 8 years.
That's fantastic. And that's all through, you went to Life University, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I went through Life, and so I started that one. And then I started another company while I was in chiropractic school too, where we were selling portable chiropractic tables. And you wouldn't think there's a big market for that, but there is. We sell 30 to 50 tables a month still to this day.
Wow.
Across the entire country. And it was basically from that same thing as I found a problem where the students didn't want to pay that kind of a price for the tables. And so I sourced the product myself, and I was able to give it to them for a better price and solve their problem. And they continue to order from me.
That's
so it just kind of expanded from there.
And then, so you really creating 2 online e-commerce stores, right? That's essentially what you've created over the last, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, I've had them now for about going on 11 years now. So I started it back in 2007. And, the biggest thing was I hustled, man. I mean, when I was in school, in between classes, I first started selling it on eBay, because they allowed me to, the manufacturer allowed me to sell all their products.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the highest tier discount because I was selling so much.
Wow.
And so I put up a few products on eBay, started selling them, started doing $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month. And then I was like, I'm going to go ahead and create a website and throw some Google AdWords on that thing and see if it can get some traction going. And, now 65% of our sales come from just organic search engine optimization that we have in place. We consistently do, over $100,000 a month in sales off of that company. And now, I feel like I said, for the last 6 or 7 years, it's been completely passive. I still look at the numbers, still get reports, things like that. But, for the most part, I barely spend any more than probably about 2 or 3 hours a month on that business.
That's fantastic, and that's exactly how you want to get your business to work, right?
Absolutely.
In those sort of online marketplaces. How much of that success to those little businesses was related to Life University, knowing that you had a marketplace to go sell to?
Well, I would say that, a lot of entrepreneurs, and myself included, cause I've come up with, ideas and products before that, didn't sell. And it was because I was trying to create a product for an audience that wasn't there, or
Mm-hmm.
for an audience that didn't have that problem. And so what I had done in this instance is I actually had already found an audience, and they were telling me what their problem was, and I was able to solve their problem. And that's really where I started with it. But I would say right now, I mean, my business is very minimal when it comes to spine models. It's probably like 5 to 7% of what our overall sales are. But that one idea opened me up to be able to create and sell and do even more than where I was.
Right. And you also give you the confidence, right, to go out and source product, figure out the manufacturing, figure out like how much money do I have to capital I have to put into it in order
Mhm.
to get a return. So I think just the life lessons it's probably taught you is just ridiculous, right?
Well, and at the same time, a lot of the students that were graduating with me, as we were finishing up the program 4 years later, they were going into debt to get more loans and things like that to be able to start their own practices. Either they had to go work for somebody else, and I knew I didn't want to do that, and so we were actually able to start our first practice with no debt.
Wow.
Because that business helped fund the startup of that business, and even to this day, our practices have no debt.
Wow.
And it's been all just, taking the money that we've made in the businesses and kind of funneling it back into the business. And then now even the 5 practices that I have now, because it started out as chiropractic, and then we
Mhm.
morphed them into medical, and we're in a very specialty medical niche called non-surgical orthopedics, where we do a lot of regenerative medicine, prolotherapy, platelet-rich plasma therapy, that PRP, stem cell therapy, those kind of things. It's a very narrow niche, but we have 5 clinics now that are doing that, and they're doing very, very well. So, and at this point, they're all passive for me too. So I've stepped out of the day-to-day operations. I have a good person in there, a CEO that's managing those clinics on a day-to-day basis, and I'm just the president. I'm still the general of that business, as well as my other businesses, where I still see financial reports every Monday morning on all my businesses, and I also once a month have a corporate meeting with them to kind of stay on top of things and be that visionary person from the top.
Right.
Kind of being the Warren Buffett style, but not as big as Warren Buffett, if you will.
Hey man, you pat yourself on the back. You sound like you've achieved and created some incredible little businesses and some cash flowing opportunities that, well done. So let's talk a little bit about your practices and the expansion of those practices, because the number one thing that comes to my mind, I'm an engineer. I'm like go straight to the nuts and bolts. Is do you have to be a doctor to own a medical practice?
Sure. So, as far as being a medical doctor, and it depends on the state that you're practicing in.
Right.
So, there are some states that you do have to be a licensed professional, or a licensed physician in that state to be able to own a practice. For example, North Carolina is one of those states. South
Mhm.
Carolina is not. You still have to be a licensed professional, but you don't have to be a licensed in that particular profession. And so, and then there's places like California, North Carolina, where you can only be licensed. You can only own a practice if you're licensed in that particular profession. So it
Right.
all just depends on that. So right now we have a little under 50 employees that work for us across those 5 clinics. And I basically started the first chiropractic clinic, and then I decided to expand into the second one once we integrated the medicine into it. And then I decided to take out the chiropractic out of it, because when I was looking at the numbers, it was the least profitable.
Hmm.
And I knew that I could fill our practice with more qualified patients by reaching out to other chiropractors and have them refer in to the regenerative medicine, because it's alternative medicine still. And so with you having chiropractic in the office, I was finding that a lot of chiropractors didn't want to refer, because as chiropractors, it's totally different than medicine. So in medicine, medical doctors and stuff will refer back and forth to each other all the time. You see that. But in chiropractic, we're afraid that the other guy's going to steal our patients, so it doesn't happen. And so I had to play on that. And so I cut it out of our practice completely, which was a big step. I mean, it was a very hard, tough decision, if you will, to really
Mhm.
take that out of the clinic. And so we took that out of the clinic, and it really was a good decision. So it allowed us to be able to, expand our referral network.
And it's an incredible thing because, and you would know more than I do, but from an outsider's point of view, I feel like the chiropractic world went through a bit of a bad name at some period of time. Maybe it was in the 90s or the early 2000s. And now I know my wife, she subscribes. There's like all these chiropractic services where you can sort of, these drop-in clinics, you just go in, you're there for no more than 10, 15 minutes, and boom, 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 they realign you, out you go, and you can rock up to the other one that's, you know, on the other side of Los Angeles. How has it evolved over your time that you've seen the chiropractic world, and now that you're not really in it anymore, but what's your sort of take on that, given its change and morphing and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest thing that chiropractic is doing right now and over the last probably 10 or 15 years is really niching down. You know, you see a lot more people who are focused on pediatrics, or you see people on pregnancy care, or you see people who are, you know, our clinics were really specific to what's called the NDS method, which we focused on about, you know, people who had really serious disc problems, bulging, herniated, degenerative discs, those kind of things, some serious back problems. And so we did some specialty treatments for those. But and you have people that will focus on, you know, other specific niches like neuropathy, or you shall have them doing a lot more functional medicine for diabetes care and, you know, fibromyalgia and those kind of things. So the really what's really been changing is the dynamic of niching down within chiropractic.
Oh, that's very, very interesting, and such an incredible thing, because we're all, our spines are so important, right? Like they are the most important things. I personally have scoliosis of the spine, just born with it, and my wife has bulged discs, and you know, I'm a tall guy. I've got to remember to stand up straight, and sometimes getting in for a bit of a realignment just makes you feel a little bit better and crack your neck, and off you go. So
absolutely.
Mate, you've achieved so much in your career, and you're such a. I think that what I'm getting from you is that you're open to so many opportunities and not pigeonholing yourself. We haven't even talked about real estate. So we're going to get into that in a little bit here, but I think that is such an incredible thing that I'm learning from you, is just that the ability to see an opportunity, take it, go and learn the opportunity, and then go and, you know, put it into practice and create a business out of it. I think that's incredible. So without further ado, let's get into the real estate and what makes you love real estate and business ownership. I know we spoke a little bit again in the green room about the tax incentives, right? So do you want to walk me through, or the listeners through, just exactly why you love those tax advantages so much?
Sure. So, you know, I wish I would have gotten into it, you know, a couple of years ago, because I've always heard that you have tax advantages and tax strategies and stuff like that with real estate, but I never really realized to the extent that you could actually be benefited from it. So I've been sick and tired of writing six-figure checks to the government. So, you know, yes, you know, I think we should pay our fair share, if you will, and all that kind of stuff, but there are strategies in place for those who want to take advantage of them. So I think if you want to take advantage of them and they're there, you should, you know, and I think that the reason why they're there is because they don't want you to just take that money that you've earned and just stick it in a bank account and just let it sit there. You know, they want you to invest it in the economy. And that's what, you know, high net worth individuals do, is they take their money and they invest it into the economy. And one of the ways that you can invest into the economy is by putting that money into real estate. And so, you know, you could put it into single family homes, you can put it into those kind of things. But one of the things that I like the most, and I know you like as well, is multifamily, 100+ unit apartments complexes, because, you know, yes, it's kind of a daunting task to kind of sit there and think about, oh my goodness, I got to go buy a large, $15 million property to make this thing worth it. But when you can start to consider the syndication side of things, where multiple investors can go in on one deal, and then you can bring in, because once you get over that, that probably $2 to $3 million range, that's when you start to have the economies of scale come into place. When you start to talk about doing cost segregation analysis, where you can now, instead of just having a single family residence that you have to depreciate over 27.5 years, now you can afford to bring a company in, a structural engineer company, come in and do a full analysis. And that costs money. That can cost, $10, $20, $30,000 to have them come in there, depending on the size of the property, to tell you how much you can cost segregate that. And for your listeners that aren't familiar with cost segregation, that's basically taking down and analyzing the entire property all the way down to the screws and the sheetrock and the flooring, the subfloor, the studs. I mean, you can go all the way down to everything. And of course, obviously the internal contents, meaning that the refrigerators and the counters and the sinks and the knobs and all that kind of stuff. But it's really cool, because I didn't realize that you could actually do that, is because my mind was so small and thinking, single family, that kind of stuff. But when you can start to get to that, 5, 10, $15 million properties, you can now afford to pay someone to come in because it's pennies on the dollar for what they can save you tax wise. And now instead of just having to depreciate that property over a 27.5 year period of time, you can now cost segregate that down, and some of them down to 5 years and some of them down to 15 years. And then, of course, the additional tax strategies that just happened recently is Trump just enacted recently the $1 million bonus depreciation on top of all of that. So in that first year. And so there's a lot of additional tax strategies and advantages that I really, really like about real estate, and it's the real estate specifically that I like is the multifamily syndication. And that's what Handford Capital does, is just focuses on trying to raise capital for other syndicators, but also finding and locating our own deals and taking them down as well.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible strategy, right? Like, say, as you said, we're all citizens of the country and need to make sure you pay your fair share, but you can minimize your tax exposure, right? And that is what, investing in hard assets is all about, right? Accelerated depreciation, with new tax laws that come in, you can accelerate that even more. But give me your maybe, armchair guide to the difference between the tax strategies involved in real estate versus the tax strategies involved in, say, your businesses, your online businesses, like your chiropractic. Like, have you seen a major difference in what you can and can't write off in the two different scenarios? One's a hard asset, one's sort of more of just an operating business.
Sure. Well, I mean, you always, in any type of business, whether you're in real estate or you're in chiropractic or medical, or, you're selling, shoes down the street in a shoe store, it doesn't really matter really kind of what business it is. There are obviously certain things that you can write off, that are costs or expenses for that business. And none of those change. So even those same expenses in my real estate business, I can still write some of those things off. If I have to, go buy office supplies, I can write all that stuff off. The biggest downside is that any type of equipment or computers or anything like that I buy in my practices, I have to basically, those are cost. You're not really cost segregating it, but you're basically still having to depreciate that. Like, you can't just spend $20,000 on some computers and just take that as an entire write-off.
Right.
You have to spend that $20,000, and then you have to put it on a depreciation schedule. And my accountant handles all that stuff, so I don't know all the numbers about how long it takes to depreciate that, but it takes a lot longer to depreciate that stuff. And so there's definitely some. The biggest thing is that you can take some pretty large depreciation on these larger assets where you wouldn't be able to otherwise. Because now you're able to cash flow on these properties and then show a loss. I've never had a business where I've been able to cash flow it and then show a loss, because my income is always higher than what my depreciation values are. And which is what all businesses should do, right? You want to be able to be profitable. But even now with this real estate, with Handford Capital, is that you can now cash flow off of a property, but then show a loss on that income at the end of the year to offset some of your other passive income. And so it's one of those things where you can now start to have your money working for you. And of course, we talked about, paying your fair share. Well, guess what happens when instead of me taking my $100,000 and sticking it in my pocket versus actually taking $100,000 and then putting it in an investment like this? Now we're able to take down larger properties. And guess what we do? We find value add properties. And so we're putting people to work to value add. When we start to renovate a unit, we're putting people to work. We're paying even more taxes on sales tax for the local economy because we're buying supplies, we're buying sheetrock, we're buying flooring, we're buying countertops, we're buying new appliances. So all of that stimulates the economy even more. And I haven't actually sat down to figure out what those numbers are, but I would venture to guess that my money being put into the economy in that local market does more for taxes, if you will, than just me paying my, 40% in taxes on that to the government. And that's why they put those incentives in place, is because they want you to take that money and they want you to spend it in that local economy so that it stimulates that economy. And again, it creates more taxable income for them at the same time. Everybody always gets upset when they hear of a high net worth individual that pays zero taxes, like Trump, but can you imagine how many jobs he's put into place and how many taxes that have been paid due to the money that he has put into other assets? And that's kind of the same thing here. We're taking these investors' money and we're putting them into these large assets and allowing to stimulate that economy at the same time, as well as giving them the benefit of the tax write-offs.
No, and someone was explaining to me, you're completely correct. Someone was explaining to me in a way that you look at it. So the government, pretty much across the world and most developed countries are not in the business of owning real estate. And so they've created tax codes in order for you, and this is the same as Australia and Europe and United Kingdom and Canada, that you can write off certain things because you're providing housing to the people, the masses. And so there's a benefit. And someone always said, if you look at the tax code, not as a hindrance, but a way in which you can get your money back. It's the different ways. It's a step-by-step guide of how you get it back. And it was just such a different way of looking at it, and not thinking it as a hindrance, but as okay, well, I'm going to go and buy a 250 unit property, and I'm going to provide housing to 250 families, right? And as you just said, putting on all this people to work, you got your on-site property manager, you got your construction team, you're buying the supplies from local home hardware store. It has a bit of a economy of growth across the just from buying that one particular asset, whether it be
and I don't know about you, but I mean, I really get a lot of joy when I go into a property and I can actually make that community not feel, but I can make that community better, go into that community and saying, we, as syndicators, we can go into a property and go, oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to add this. I want to add that. But until you actually sit down with the people who live in that community and say, hey, what do you want? These are our ideas. Which one do you think is going to be best? And then you can start to put those in place. And then you start to see that community just really coming together, and that local, like really it's a microcosm of a community, because it's just that, 400 or 500 residents in that one community of those apartment complexes. And you can now start to change that community, make the units look better. Obviously, you're going to command some more rent for it, but you're going to make their life better inside of that community. And it just helps everybody all along. And I like being able to do that, to go able to kind of see the before and after stuff,
No, it's great to see the before and after, right? You get your videos, your drone shots, and you're coming in. We're actually about to do one on one of our properties, just finished the exterior renovation in the leasing office. And, just to see the transition, just by painting brick, it just gives it such a pop, right? And everyone's like, oh, what's this new property? You change the name of the property. Oh, what's this? And it feels like a hotel, but it's not really a hotel. It's just a 1980s asset. Mate, but tell me a little bit more about your other work that you're doing in the community. I mentioned in the beginning, you're investing as an angel investor into some startups and incubators. What are they focused around, and what are they doing to help the local community and entrepreneurs?
Sure. So, in South Carolina and, across North Carolina as well, there are angel investing associations or groups where, you can actually go to them instead of you having to do all of the legwork of, vetting the startups and things like that. The various startups can now submit their proposals to this group, and then they go in and actually vet everybody, and then they make the decision to invest. And we're able to go alongside that. We have to pay a fee, to be part of that angel investing group for that convenience. But for me, it's been really nice because you can go and pay that fee, have them do all the due diligence in the background and vetting 100 startups to be able to invest in 10 of them that you think is going to really do real well, and really be able to say, kind of, again, stimulate the economy. And most of those startups are in the FinTech space. Mm-hmm. So it's because I'm so close to Charlotte, that's usually where I go to, try to invest, because now it's actually number 3, the third largest financial city in the country. And of course, New York is number 1, and I think it might be San Francisco.
Yeah, maybe Chicago. Maybe, I don't know.
No, it's not Chicago. So I know it's not Chicago. It's something where in California. I think it's actually San Francisco or something like that. Okay. And then Charlotte. Charlotte used to be number 2 until I think San Francisco just outbeat it about a year or two ago. But it's a big financial district there. A lot of tech jobs. A lot of millennials going into Charlotte, which is one of the reasons why I like that for the apartment community, because as the millennials come in, that's the class of people we usually see in some of these B, C class properties.
Right. No, it's absolutely fantastic. And so, are you seeing a major growth and diversification in places like Charlotte into the fintech space in order to diversify the economy?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of incubator programs and accelerator programs within Charlotte that really cater to the fintech space. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with that, it's financial technology. So there's a lot of, because it's a financial, district area, there's a lot of money in there backing it from a lot of the major players, like Bank of America, those kind of things, Wells Fargo. And so they also there's a program. So we have a monthly real estate meetup in Charlotte that we do the first Monday of every month. And we do it in a space called the Packard Place.
Mm-hmm.
And the Packard Place is a shared co-working space. But one of their floors, the entire floor, is basically dedicated to FinTech startups. And they basically give them that space to be able to use, to be able to, create the opportunity to continue to stimulate the economy. And of course, that same place at the Packard Place, they do, the pitch breakfast program where they go in and there's 80 to 90 people there. And there's kind of like a Shark Tank style where they go in and get pitched and stuff like that. So I like being involved and being part of that. My goal isn't to, be a part of that to make a ton of money. It's really for me to, be able to continue to give money to participate in those types of activities. And if one of them does really well and takes off, great, but I'm not going into it because most of those technology companies are not going to make it.
Right.
But you have to give them that environment, and you have to allow them to be able to have that space and the environment to be able to see if that particular product or program is going to do really well. And then there's a lot of, FinTech spaces that you'll never hear of and you never will hear of, but they make a lot of money. But they're just in the back end of a lot of different, things that you just never hear them as far as prime time or anything.
Sure. Well, it sounds incredibly intriguing and sounds like you got a lot of fingers in different pies, so to speak, because it's just, you're building this ecosystem of businesses to help support your family. But what's the 2018 and beyond got in store for you personally and professionally?
Sure. So two things primarily right now. One of the things my wife and I are doing is we have our podcast, like you mentioned very early on in the interview, it's called Tough Decisions for Entrepreneurs. Anybody who's listening, you want to reach out to us, it's at toughdecisions.net. You can find some more information about us there on our website. But that's one of our main focuses is to, help other entrepreneurs, teach them how to do things. We're also speaking at various events. We just did one in Atlanta recently, and we spoke on a topic that we are very passionate about called relentless implementation, where we teach how to get into the mindset of relentless implementation so that instead of just thinking about doing something all the time, you can actually take that desire, move it into an ambition, and then continue to get into that relentless mindset. And so that's one of the things my wife and I are looking forward to doing more of. Our goal is to continue to speak on various stages. Obviously, we have 4 little ones. So we have a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, and we also have a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. So we do have 4 little ones, and I do mean little. And so we do keep pretty busy with that, but we've been able to balance things very well, and we work really well together. Matter of fact, she's actually in the room right over here next to me. I'm looking at her through in my office. I have little glass windows here.
Yep.
She's in a meeting right now with one of our corporate team. She is very, very good at what she does, and she's good about balancing her life as well as the family. And I do the same thing. We try to keep that nice balance, and I try to take the kids and bring them wherever I am. And then, of course, the second thing we're doing is Handford Capital. You can visit us at handfordcapital.com and find out more information about us. We're always looking for investors. We're always looking for co-syndicators to come on our, help partner with some of the deals that we're finding and be able to do some capital raising and various things like that. And back to the tough decisions thing, we have a weekly entrepreneur email that we send out that includes like various technologies that can be used in business. Obviously, so we have some summaries of our podcast that we do on there. We also have inspiring entrepreneur quotes on there and some of the best books we recommend, some of our best books that are recommended on there. And so it's a good email to jump on, for your listeners, if they are into this entrepreneur mindset or they want to become a business owner or they are a business owner. It'd be very good for them to really continue to get that email list. So they can go to toughdecisions.net and sign up for that weekly entrepreneur email as well.
Nice. Well, mate, I really enjoyed today's interview with you, but are you ready to jump in to give me your top 5 investing tips?
Sure.
Mate, what is the number one habit that you practice to keep on track towards your goals?
I would say my number one goal, my number one thing or habit that I do on a regular basis is everybody always talks about having a mastermind. And so I, on a regular basis, at least 3 to 4 times a year, I am in a mastermind with somebody else that will help me keep on track. And then I also have what I call a mini mastermind every morning with my wife. So every morning we get up and we have our coffee together on our back porch, overlooking our pool. Our dog actually crawls up next to the pool and just puts her paws on the edge of the pool and just watches the pool and the waterfall coming off the hot tub and stuff. And we're sitting there just talking about what are we going to do for that day, and talking through different things we need to talk through, and just kind of setting the tone and setting the stage for what do we need to accomplish for that day. And I would say for those of you who have a spouse that you can do that with, try to get in a routine of doing that, to kind of have that open communication. And if for some reason you don't have a spouse or you don't want to do that, then find a business partner or a friend or somebody that you can do that with on a regular basis, because it'll definitely help you stay on track.
Love it. No, I love those morning rituals and morning hugs to get the day going, right? And to kick it off on the right legs.
Absolutely.
So, awesome stuff. Mate, who's been the most influential person in your career to date?
Wow, there are so many people that have been influential. I would probably pick out 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
One more recently, but one in the past that it's kind of interesting because it's actually my wife's uncle, Dr. Lee Popwell. He's a chiropractor in Greenville, South Carolina. It's where I met my wife, and she and when I worked for him for 4 years before I went and did my doctorate degree. And he really helped me kind of put myself in the mindset of what I needed to do and how to accomplish things on a high level. And it's interesting because, he just sent me a message the other day, saying, asking me for some advice too. So now he's been my mentor for a while, and now I'm kind of turning the tables a little bit and helping him in a couple of different areas because I've now taken myself a little bit farther than he has and what he has done. And so the second person I would say recently is, love him or hate him, Grant Cardone. And, everybody usually either loves him or hate him. I'm usually kind of in the middle. I think he's hilarious in a lot of things that he does. But as far as mindset and thinking big, that's really what I like. And, that's one of the books. One of his books that I like the most is the 10X rule.
Yeah.
I recommend that to just about anybody because it'll help put yourself in a mindset of abundance and setting your goals really high. So you put yourself in the mindset of reaching a larger goal instead of just trying to find these little tiny small goals to accomplish.
100%. No, I completely agree. I think it's the importance of having early mentors in your career, like you talked about. Your wife's uncle is really important, helping you set the track. And well done that you've gone out and created yourself as a key person of influence in a space that now he looks to you as that person to say, hey, I need to go get some advice on. And obviously everyone knows Grant Cardone. He is all over Instagram and Facebook and social media. You can't escape him, but incredible guy, an incredible journey. Mate, I know because you're in the fintech space and you're investing in some stuff, you'd have an influential tool in your business. Now, give me what is the most influential tool, and it doesn't have to necessarily be software. It could also be a hardware if you have anything.
Influential tool. I would say for me, the biggest thing that I've done that has helped me is Calendly. And I know that might sound kind of crazy, but Calendly has, I am very busy, but I also want to protect my time with my family. And so I have a lot of people that'll reach out to me and they want to jump on a call and they want to talk or whatever. And I very rarely just answer my phone from somebody that I don't know. And so now that I have Calendly, I can send them a link and say, hey, yeah, I'd love to jump on a call with you. Here's my calendar. And I have basically 3 hours on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday that I've blocked off on various parts of the day. And those are my times. And it's worked out very well. And obviously, if somebody can't meet me on those times, I can meet outside of it. But it's really been nice to be able to do that because it takes a lot of the back and forth of trying to schedule something on your calendar and various things like that. And now, as far as the real estate stuff is concerned, one that's really helped me is Contactually. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before, but if you go to contactually.com, they are they're built for the real estate space where you can make sure that you're following up on your leads, but not necessarily leads, but lenders and brokers and owners and other co-syndicators. And we also use it for our podcast to follow up on podcasts that we have on as guests, as well as making sure we do certain things with them. And each bucket that you put them in, because they call them buckets, but every bucket that you put them in, you can put a different touch time. Like you want to make sure that you touch your lenders once a month or your brokers every 2 weeks. It'll connect to your email. And so if you send out an email to a broker, it'll reset that clock. But if you haven't touched that broker in 2 weeks, it'll alert you and say, hey, you need to go contact this guy. You haven't talked to him in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of keeps you on task to make sure that you're constantly, poking your network and continue to keep your network close to you.
Yeah, that's great. Contactually.com. I'll have to check that out. All right, mate. Second last question. The biggest failure you had in your career, and what did you learn from that failure?
The biggest failure, I would say my biggest failure would be getting into business with somebody that I didn't fully know.
Mm-hmm.
But I got into business with him because at first he was my friend. And so sometimes we get to be friends with people, and because we're friends with them, we think they might be good partners. And sometimes it's best just to keep your friends friends and your partners. And right now I don't have any business that I am partners with, meaning that I have I own all my companies 100%. I started them all from scratch, and I own all of them. And so would I consider bringing somebody on if they had some sort of value? Yes, but it would have to be a very good fit.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, on our podcast, just recently did a Saturday episode, which is called our Step Up Your Game with Dan episode, where I talked about partnerships, and I go through this story on that episode. And it talks about the do's and the don'ts about who you should and should not get in business with. And even if you do have a partner, what are some things that you should do in play ahead of time? Because you want to make sure you have, certain things written down and in place before you get into bed with somebody with this kind of a business. Because you really are. It's like a marriage,
Right.
when you get into a partnership. And that's one of the biggest things I would say on our podcast is when we talk about tough decisions, is people will talk about the tough decision of having to, dissolve a partnership because they didn't know that person going in or didn't really know how well they'd work. And so having that separation of duties and various things like that. But in that particular instance, that partner, started to get into drugs and various things like that. And so we had to, part ways because he was spending the profits on drugs and, it really wasn't going too well. So, and of course I thought I knew him, and we were really good friends for a couple of years, and it just didn't really work out. So that would be my biggest failure. And I guess what I've learned from that is don't do partnerships, which is why I don't have partnerships. But I know that's not always a reasonable answer as far as like everybody not doing partnerships. There's always reasons to get other partners in. And even with Handford Capital, we partner with other people, but we're not like partners in a business, if you will.
Sure.
We're just a partner in the fact that we help raise money or help find deals or various things like that.
No, but it's all important, right? Because even at the lower level of partnership with just getting involved in the syndication, you need to understand who you're getting into bed with, regardless of whether it's an actual commitment or just sort of a soft commitment to say, hey, we're going to raise capital in this one particular deal and I'm going to go do something else after that. But no, incredible stuff. One last time, where can people reach you to continue the conversation?
Sure. So you can reach us on our podcast website, which is toughdecisions.net. And again, you can go there and sign up for our free weekly entrepreneur email. If you'd like, you can shoot me an email as well at Dan, just DAN, at handfordcapital.com. Just don't include those in the show notes because of spam. But I always, on my podcast, I always say, go listen to the episode if you want the guy's email or something.
Right.
So you can also visit us at handfordcapital.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, obviously Instagram, Twitter, any of the social media platforms we're on. But we would be glad to, take any phone calls that your listeners might have about real estate or business or, family or working with your spouse or whatever. I do a lot of, talks and, consulting with that. Right now I'm not charging for it. So, my goal isn't to sit there and try to create a big coaching business and try to help people with various things, but really just trying to use that as an outlet to be able to, give in the different areas that I've learned. But, those would be the two biggest ways, is just going to toughdecisions.net or the handfordcapital.com.
Well, mate, thank you so much for dropping in today. I just want to quickly summarize some of the things that I've taken away from this awesome conversation. And it really is the ability, as I said earlier in the piece, to identify an opportunity and then go out and then try and, respond to that market like you did when you first were at Life University. You responded to the spinal models and molds, and you went out and found out how you can buy it cheaper, and you had a market there. And I think you said earlier that you'd created ideas in the past, but didn't necessarily have the market because it wasn't a need for people. So I think that was a really big takeaway. And just identifying the different little ecosystems you can have in your business in order for it to complement one another. And it's not about having one specific business, but it's about having an ecosystem of little businesses that can come together and create a bigger, better thing, right? And in the final thing was obviously, working with your spouse and having an incredible journey and story about your podcast and stuff like that. Did I leave anything out?
No, I think that was great. I mean, I think the biggest thing is, a lot of people get caught up in the desire phase of, the desire of wanting to go do something, but they fail to act on that desire, which brings that desire from just a desire to an ambition, which is a strong desire. And once you get to that strong desire and you can line up that strong desire with your why and your purpose in life, the relentless implementation side of those things, it will go hand in hand. And when you go and you work, if you will, it won't feel like work, because I don't ever feel like what I'm doing is work. I mean, do I have bad days? Yeah, sure. We all have bad days. We all have days we didn't like doing something or whatever. But I usually come home and I'm like, yeah, I had a, even if I was a bad day, I had a bad day or I had a good day or whatever it was. But guess what? I can't wait to get back there tomorrow. I just had so much fun. You know what I mean? I just enjoy what I do.
Well, mate, thank you so much for dropping by. Enjoy the rest of your week and we'll catch up soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Another cracking episode jam-packed with some incredible investing advice and actionable steps. Make sure you check out all the show notes up on my website at reedgoosens.com and make sure you reach out to Dan and his wife at the Tough Decisions Podcast.com. I want to make sure to thank you for taking some time out of your day to tune in to continue to grow your financial IQ, because that's what we're all about on this show. And we're going to do this all again next week. So take care, be safe, and remember, happy investing.